President John Magufuli of Tanzania, otherwise known as a bulldozer, was assassinated, was killed. They are reporting it in many different ways. The official report out of Tanzania is that he died from heart failure. The unofficial report from the BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, CGTN, and every single Western and Eastern media outside of the continent of Africa have reported that he has died from COVID-19. They did this, they're doing this to even in death discredit and devalue one of the strongest Pan-African leaders of our time on the continent of Africa, who stood up against their vaccines, who stood up against their COVID-19, who stood up against their pandemic.
You know what he did? He took tests of goats, papa, and I'm not mistaken, probably a chicken. And when he take those tests, he sent them back to the lab and they said they are positive.
For COVID?
So
he was the one who sent a sample of the papaya and whatever else to the lab to test for COVID. And the papaya tested positive for COVID.
Everything tested positive.
Everything tested positive for COVID.
The papaya.
Yes, and everything.
This is madness.
Yes, and he's been making a stand against the vaccines, against this idea of locking down the world, particularly against the idea of locking down Africa. And so now they've killed him, and the narrative that they're spewing is that he died from COVID. And we're going to be going to the phone lines to speak with my very good friend and brother, Pan-Africanist himself. We're talking about Kwame Pianke, who is in the United States right now. Kwame Pianke obviously needs no introduction to this space. He is a commentator on this program. He has been for a very long time. We look forward every time there's an issue to speak to Kwame. It's African-centered. He has been a facilitator in the Rites of Passage program for boys as a member of the Barbers Club at an African-centered charter school. He himself started a school program at a local public school system in his area in the United States. He's the owner of a food business, and he has a deep love of African history and traditions and has applied what he has learned into the areas he loves most: technology, gardening, and education. Of course, a critical Pan-African commentator, deep thinker. Good morning to you, my brother Kwame Pianke. Good morning.
Good morning to you, my sister. How are you this morning?
I am well, if you two are well.
I am well. If you are well.
We have to be, Kwame. We have to be in these times. My brother, we have been talking. And our deepest condolences to the people of Tanzania, you know, and just to the African people generally. President Magufuli has been, well, I say he's been killed. I'm just going to go right in there and ask you.
I agree.
Yes.
I totally agree with that, too.
Yes.
And let's go back. Everybody's aware who the Council on Foreign Relations are in the United States.
Yes.
They were formed out of the Rhodes Money Trust, Cecil Rhodes's murderous rampage into Africa, which was financed by, big bankers in Britain. We know who their names are, and so the Council on Foreign Relations was formed out of that, and they had articles going back to last year saying that, and there was an author of one of their articles saying that Magufuli was increasingly problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the author named John Campbell,
mm-hmm.
and John Campbell had the ear of the then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Pompeo, to me hilariously, was saying that there are irregularities in Tanzania's election.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we remember that.
This is like the leper calling the toilet, white.
And
right?
exactly, and it's interesting. He was saying this in January of this year, just before, he left office, just before they were voted out of office in the United States. So just so our listeners understand that he was saying this as late as just a few months ago. Just before they left office.
As late as a few months ago, in January, they imposed sanctions on Tanzania. And this is from the Council of Foreign Relations blog. This is a quote. Mm-hmm. Magufuli further irritated relations when in 2016, his government unilaterally canceled a contract with Symbion Power, a U.S. company that received more than $110 million in procurement awards in Tanzania.
Mm-hmm. I want us to pause a moment on that.
Good.
Pause a moment on that, because this is, I think, critical to any conversation about the death of President Magufuli. It was his stance on these international trade and the bilateral or multilateral arrangements between the continent of Africa or individual countries inside of the continent of Africa and the West, including the United States, Canada, and China. What can you tell us about that?
Yep. Well, obviously he angered a bunch of big people, the countries that you mentioned, but let's go down the list. For instance, he banned GMO corn, or his party, should we say, banned GMO corn in Tanzania. That was back in 2018. So there you are offending the Monsanto complex, which is intimately connected with U.S. foreign policy, and the Syngenta complex, which is connected with UK and EU foreign policy. He also killed a Chinese loan for a port, and I hope this sounds familiar to everybody in Jamaica, right? His predecessor, Jakawaya Kikwete, had signed the deal with Chinese investors to build the port on the condition that they would get 30 years to guarantee on the loan and 99 years uninterrupted lease. Basically, Magufuli said only a drunken man would have signed such a deal, and after coming to power, he initiated the renegotiation process and pressed investors to bring down the lease period to 33 years instead of 99 years. The Chinese balked, and the government canceled the port. We can go to food resources. For instance, he stepped in to get a higher price for the farmers. When the private buyers balked at that price, he forced a government-controlled bank to step in and to buy the entire crop and look for buyers. And he said, we will eat anything that is not sold. And he ordered his troops into the field to protect the crop from black market operators. And he's protected mining interests. The party increased the royalties on gold from 4 to 6%. The government owned 16% of the stock of mining companies. The government thought they were being ripped off by an Indian-owned cellular phone company, so they came in and increased their stake to 49% from 40%. So this is true nationalism. I mean, this is Garveyism in practice.
In action. He talked about the massive, and this is using his own words, he talked about massive pillaging of Tanzania resources and oppression of already marginalized Tanzanians by multinational corporations. And he said, in his own words, they must go. He didn't just say that, but he actually did what he said should happen. So this, as you said earlier, my brother Kwame Pianke, angered not just multinational corporations, not just individual countries, but a swathe of other countries like China, which would not necessarily, and of course the EU. And so, and this is why it's reminding me a bit of the kind of the Patrice Lumumba situation, where they I think all have their hands in this.
Yep, and I would say the Kwame Nkrumah situation, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Because Kwame Nkrumah, similar things, he had the Volta Project. Ghana was ahead of the so-called Asian Tigers in terms of economic development and industrialization in the early 1960s. Ghana had its own truck companies, its own car companies, self-sufficient in terms of power. And once Nkrumah said he would like to take a truck and drive a hole through the Constitution that the British set up during the negotiations, his days were numbered. And remember, it was a combination of Britain and the U.S. that got rid of him.
Yes.
Right? And then he got sick. You know, he was deposed. He of course moves to Guinea Conakry, and then essentially he died in a hospital in Hungary of cancer. And here
the parallels.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, because you're pointing us to the parallels between Nkrumah and Magufuli.
Yes, and then you take Sekou Touré, for instance. Sekou Touré demanded the same thing as Magufuli did. The French came in and tore down all the infrastructure before Guinea became independent. So these things, and then again, Sekou Touré dies in a U.S. hospital in Cleveland in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a pattern here, and I really think what we need to get into, what is nationhood? Mm-hmm. Are you truly a nation if you can't protect your supply line and can't protect your shipping lane? Mm-hmm. Are you truly a nation if you don't have the means to create your own mechanisms of self-defense? Mm-hmm. Are you truly a nation if you can't protect your prized leaders? Mm-hmm. And are you truly a strong bloc if they can play one country against the other? Mm-hmm. And I know PLO Lumumba talked about this, where he said that if Tanzania has strict mining requirements and strict royalty requirements, the Chinese or the U.S. should not be able to run to Zambia in order to get a better deal.
And what did Zambia do? Zambia blocked Pierre Lumumba. Remember that? No, this is interesting.
Exactly.
This is interesting, Kwame, because if there ever was a Pan-African leader on the continent of Africa in this time, it was Magufuli. I spoke to two brothers this morning who live in Tanzania, and one of the things we didn't get into with them was also a situation where Tanzania, and we heard Ayakush mention it, the right to return. This is something that Magufuli was very serious about and was facilitating and is facilitating for Africans in the diaspora to return, that right to return. So he was making available lands for people like ourselves to return to Tanzania.
Yes.
And that was something that is ongoing. We hope that Samia, Madam President, will continue this policy, but we're going to talk about her in 2 minutes. We don't have a whole lot of time, so he angered Canada with the gold mining situation. He chased out China,
yes, he did.
Right? And then you mentioned the European Union and the US thing, and he went further. He laughed in their faces because he sent papaya and all kinds of fruits to be tested for COVID-19 samples. And all of those samples of foods and animals and so on came back positive for COVID-19. He laughed at them and said this is a pandemic.
He laughed at them.
Yeah.
And that shows his science background, because we're going to get into the PCR test. I'll get into it briefly, right?
Yes.
The inventor of the PCR test, his name was Kerry Mullis. He conveniently died in August 2019 in I think it was of a stroke. He was a surfer in good shape, right? And so he was railing against the use of the PCR test for viruses, particularly HIV, because he said at the time they were using the test to unjustifiably denote Africans as HIV positive, so Western medicines could be pumped into them and eventually kill them, right? And so Magufuli, I think, was well aware of this, and he saw the PCR test, and frankly, to me, China and other Western European countries in the U.S. have weaponized the test to the extent that to the extent where anybody can test positive. And he knew it was a bigger cost to shut down his economy than to stop a so-called pandemic.
And remember, he's a scientist.
He's a scientist. And remember, and then if you have any economic background, you know this is the case. In the U.S., for every 1% rise in unemployment, 50,000 people die of either suicide, murder, cancer, heart attack, diabetes, you name it. Right? So where we have now in the United States a suicide epidemic in Jamaica, Jamaicans murder each other when they get stressed out. So this is the end result of this. And he saw this, and again, to me, the definition of wisdom is to be able to act on something where you might only have 20% of the facts. Right? And he acted on that correctly, if you were to ask me.
And tell us, in terms of his stance now against the big pharmaceutical companies, because here his most recent stance was against big pharma in terms of the vaccines.
Exactly. And so he wasn't going to accept the vaccines, and that was one of Pompeo's arguments for sanctioning Tanzania. In fact, basically the U.S. said they considered themselves the leading provider of health care services in the country of Tanzania. And so that's what Pompeo was very angry at. Because when you call what are health care services? Those are the big U.S. pharmaceutical companies. And how have there been relations between the U.S. pharmaceutical companies and African people worldwide? Mm-hmm. We could take it right to the Caribbean. What did Johnson & Johnson do? What was in their talcum powder?
Mm-hmm. Asbestos. Exactly. Asbestos causing cancer, which isn't even discussed properly in the spaces in the Caribbean. That's another thing.
Exactly.
So that he stood up in recent times in the last few months from March, onwards to say, listen, we're not taking the vaccines. He laughed in their faces. Actually, he said, we know what you're doing. This is a pandemic. And he said, we do not require Tanzanians to wear masks. We do not require we're not going to lock down our country on your fraud. And this is basically what he said. We're not making this up. So,
no, we're not. And then who economically benefits from these masks? What country? Who is the main producer of these masks in the world? China, right? Some German officials just got caught for laundering money from China by selling the masks. They're personally profiting from the masks, right?
And such a strong Pan-Africanist.
We're talking about economic protection.
Exactly, and such a strong Pan-Africanist who is talking about reuniting the African family for development, who's talking about bringing African diaspora back into the spaces, who is very active in the Eastern Bloc of Africa, and also by extrapolation within the African Union, whose voice is pretty strong, and who's leading a nationalist and a continental drive for protection of the African land, of the African minerals, that Africa belongs to the Africans, and so Africans must benefit first and foremost, who has stopped all bilateral arrangements between China and Tanzania if Africans are not benefiting, between the European Union and Tanzania if Africans are not benefiting, between Canada, who nobody's talking about much, and Tanzania if Africans are not benefiting, between the U.S. So here's one man standing up against all these multinational corporations, big pharma, and Western, I was going to say democracies, but they're not really democracies.
No, they're not. It's warmed over feudalism. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
That's what Western democracy is.
So he had to go. And if you and one of the things we talk about, Kwame, and you've reminded me of from time to time, is Henry Kissinger in all of this, and his idea of population control and so on. We don't have time to throw that in, but that's another thing. But so he had
controlling countries through food.
Yeah. So he had to go. Magufuli had to go. How did they kill him?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. They said he had heart problems for 10 years. That's what they say, but he looked very vibrant to me. Somebody who has severe heart problems, you can see it in their eyes. You really can see it in their eyes.
He was always doing push-ups. Do you notice that because he's somebody he's a populist, so when he goes into the areas where the farmers are working and so on, do you notice in most of the videos you see him just drop to the ground and doing push-ups, and he'll do all 8, 9, 10. Look at those videos. He's always doing push-ups.
Exactly. And then we have to look in. I think everybody in your audience needs to look at the church committee hearings in the U.S. in 1975. And they should look in those hearings of the CIA's assassination techniques, which were exposed during those hearings. Mm-hmm. And one of those was heart attacks. Ironically, Frank Church got cancer and died of cancer after those hearings. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So people need to investigate that themselves. That is not me saying that. That's not me making it up. It's not some wild-eyed conspiracy theory. That's in the congressional record. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, and so we have to look at that, I don't know what sort of protection he could have had. I do know that, like, say, for instance, in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm, when it came to food poisoning and things of that nature, he always went into the restaurant's kitchen to observe the food being cooked, right? So those are the sort of security protocols that are needed. And even then, Malcolm was still poisoned in Egypt, right? And so those are the things that we have to take a look at in terms of protecting our leader. If the U.S. leader travels, the U.S. president travels with his own food overseas.
He travels with everything. And Africans have to be aware of this, and especially African leaders like Magufuli. What can we learn from what has happened to him? Now, his successor, of course, is the vice president, because President Magufuli was assassinated in the first year of his second term, which means that she's going to go up to, say, 2025, is it? 2025.
Yeah.
Or she's likely to go up to 20. What do we know about her, Samia Hassan?
Well, yeah, all I know about her really is that she has a Master's of Science in Economic Development. She is from the autonomous territory of Zanzibar. We're going to get into. I need to get into Zanzibar briefly. She is also a participant of the World Economic Forum, and that is very important because the World Economic Forum is responsible for Davos. And immediately when the lockdown started, they had a 1,000-page web page detailing their plans for the global reset. You don't come up with plans like that in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
That takes years, right? And so if people know about the World Economic Forum, the founder of the World Economic Forum is a man named Klaus Schwab, and you detailed him in the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
His father worked for a company called Escher Weiss, because his father was a director at the company called Escher Weiss, which was Hitler's go-to company in terms of major projects, right? Eventually, Schwab becomes a director of Escher Weiss, and under his direction, Escher Weiss helped to build up apartheid South Africa's nuclear capability.
And all of this is to say that Samia Suluhu Hassan, who has been sworn in as Tanzania's first female president, and this is following on the death of John Magufuli. She's a former vice president, and you're pointing out to us that we don't know much about her at the moment, but what we do know is that she's out of Zanzibar, which you say we need to talk about later, but that also she is a member, a participant at some level in the World Economic Forum, and you're underscoring that is pretty important to note.
Yes, because of its Nazi roots, right? The chairman of the EMF was a German banker when it was called the European Management Forum initially, before the name was changed to the World Economic Forum. So Schwab selected as chairman a man named Dr. Hermann J. Abs. He worked for Deutsche Bank under Hitler. That was Hitler's go-to bank, right? So we have to understand this is what you're dealing with. And a lot of the eugenics projects that you're seeing throughout the world, eugenics initiated in Britain under Francis Galton. The U.S. took it and ran with it, the Rockefellers and so on and so forth, and Margaret Sanger, who I need to say, and in her American Birth Control League, the Nazi top doctor was invited to participate in it. And the Nazis took this eugenics pseudoscience and ran with it. So what are we seeing now? The Galton Institute, remember I said Francis Galton, developed the AstraZeneca vaccine. The AstraZeneca vaccine is being banned throughout Europe for causing blood clots in the lungs. Although the
European Union has just said that the risks, the benefits outweigh the risk. They're not saying it doesn't happen. They're saying the benefits outweigh the risk, and this is critical for us to understand too. I heard Dr. Peter Figueroa, for example, saying that when you admit COVID patients anyway, you have to give them anticoagulant and so on. So talking about blood clots, I think he's kind of saying that you would have to do that anyway. And that I find very interesting when Big Pharma can dictate what comes out of our mouth to the extent that they are dictating it. My sister, by the way, in England, who would not want me to say this, took the AstraZeneca vaccine. She's a teacher in England, and she's already developed a blood clot. She has developed a blood clot in her mouth. She never wanted me to say it, but I'm just saying that this is what has happened to my own sister who has taken the AstraZeneca vaccine.
And I've had family members take it. My daughter took it, and I'm very disappointed in her because of that, because, again, there are fertility problems with these vaccines.
Okay.
Right? The spike because they're doing things with the spike proteins, it causes infertility.
Exactly. And so there's a whole other conversation that we're gonna have later on, Kwame. We're gonna have to have it because it's important to have these discussions. We don't have enough spaces to have these conversations, but we cannot be afraid of the consequences, as Kwame Nkrumah says, or was it Morley Marcus Messiah Garvey? Men who earnest are not afraid of consequences, and much less women. So we can't.
Garvey. Yeah.
Garvey. We can't afford to be afraid. So here's the situation now. We're watching Samia Suluhu Hassan. We don't know much about her. She's soft-spoken, everybody's saying. She's welcomed, embraced by the West, and the Western media is reporting on her in a very, very positive way. We're suspicious of that. It reminds me of Ellen Johnson's Sirleaf. So we're watching this to see exactly what happens in Tanzania, because Tanzania is still, in my eyes, has been under Magufuli, one of the doorways for diaspora Africans to get back to Mother Africa. Is that going to be closed off? I notice also that she is Muslim. This is not to say one thing or the other, but just to say that I notice that she's strongly so. But let us watch and see what happens, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I want to get to Zanzibar a little bit, right? Because Zanzibar was an independent entity. And deployed to, and I'm reading an article from Mid-Press website. It's a very good news website. And they said deployed to undermine the independent government of Zanzibar until making it part of a new country called Tanzania by exploiting Pan-African sensibilities. And basically, Frank Carlucci, who was the head State Department guy and also Colin Powell's mentor, was whispering in the ear of both then Tanganyika and Zanzibar to come together. So basically, the U.S. foreign policy elite put enormous pressure on Julius Nyerere to bring the leaders of the Zanzibar revolution under control once the union was executed. Mm-hmm. And he proved up to the task by jailing one of the revolution's most prominent figures in 1972. Mm-hmm. His name was Abdul Rahman Muhammad Babu. Right? Mm-hmm. So Zanzibar was that independent society. I don't know if Samia has embraced that nationalism in there. I'm going to emphasize not so much Magufuli anymore, but the party. What is his party going to do? Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see the relationship between Samia and the rest of the party.
We're
watching. Is she going to become autocratic with the party? Yeah. Is she going to drive the dissenters out of the party?
Or are we going to see Magufuli supporters? Is there anyone within the party who is strongly Pan-African as Magufuli was? And will that person rise to the fore? Or will there be a tussle, for leadership in the party? Let us see. They seem to be rallying around her for now. But let's watch and see what happens. We wish her all the best. And I hope that she was a vice president. We hope that she follows the policies of John Magufuli and, stand up to the bullies, the Western bullies. Hope that she'll be able to do that, and that the party will stand behind her on that. Outside of that, then, Tanzania is in for rocky road ahead. We wish Tanzania all the best. We hope to head there in July, August. That is still the plan, but we watch to see what happens.
Yes.
Thank you so much, my brother, Kwame Pianke, as usual, for just putting things in perspective. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, my sister. You have a good day.
And you too.
Bye-bye.
What has set the day not for Tanzanians but entire Africa? Death has robbed us. Magufuli has gone. It has raided a selfless and courageous leader. The ambassador of Ubuntu is no more. A dark cloud has covered Africa. A hero has fallen. A Pan-Africanist has untimely left us. A gallant son of the soul has departed. Good people don't live longer, but their legacy lives forever. Heroes don't rest in peace, but they rest in power. God gives, God takes. Rest in peace, Magufuli. You are a God-fearing man. You awakened minds, bringing Africans together, enlightening and empowering Tanzanians, motivating people with respect, valuing everyone's input, welcoming mistakes as part of learning. You were clean, smart and good, a true leader. You didn't think of yourself but everyone. Rest in power, Magufuli. May your dear soul rest in power. You banned all foreign trips. You were declared a dictator for not taking orders from African enemies because you refused to bow down to them, because you are not a puppet or a toy leader. You never took loans from them. Revived, resuscitated, resurrected, revamped the Tanzanian economy. You tirelessly fought against corruption, injustice and human rights abuse. Your policies were heroic before you were declared a hero. Rest in power, Magufuli. Those who came before you ran their race. You ran your race. We'll take from where you left and run our own race at an improved pace. Africa will be united one day. You are at least on safe hands. Tell Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Thomas Isidore Sankara, Steve Bantu Biko, Samora Machel, the spirit of Ubuntu African unity is still our agenda and Pan-Africanism. If I had powers, I could have asked a few more years for you. If I had powers, I could have asked you to rise up and finish your unfinished business. But alas, I will just say, rest in power, my powerful comrade. Until we meet next time, rest in power, Magufuli John. We are all devastated by your loss. This is not a Magufuli family loss. This is not a Tanzanian loss. It's an African loss. An African pain, an African enemy gain. We exactly don't know what killed you. Only God knows why, how and when. Africans shouldn't worry about God's program. Instead, they must get stronger and be united. The fight for African restoration still goes on. Everything will be all right. Rest in power, John Pombe Magufuli. Pumzika kwa amani, Khredola pa, ten cancer and pass, Luanu Dom, Lalango Olo. Rest in power, John Pombe Magufuli. Rest in peace, John. Rest in peace, John. Rest in power, John Pombe Magufuli. Rest in peace. May your dear soul rest in power. May your dear soul rest in power. Rest in peace, Magufuli. I am Obed Dube, the African poet.
Were underway. The flags will fly half-mast. He was elected president's fifth president in 2015. Right now, I'd like us to cross over to the State House, where President Uhuru Kenyatta, who's also the East Africa Community chairperson, is expected to address Kenyans, not only Kenyans, but the East Africa community as large, because Tanzania is a member state of the East Africa Community. And so let's cross over live and listen in.
And indeed immense sadness of the untimely passing of my dear brother, His Excellency John Pombe Magufuli, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. On behalf of the government and people of Kenya, I convey our sincere condolences to the First Lady of Tanzania, Her Excellency Janet Magufuli, their children, the entire Magufuli family, and indeed affirm our deep solidarity with the government and people of Tanzania during this challenging time. Tanzania remains in our thoughts, and our prayers. Africa and the world has lost an illustrious leader whose vision, passion, and immense leadership propelled the nation of Tanzania forward and also steered the East African community to closer integration. On the continental stage, the late President Magufuli was a champion of Pan-Africanism. In the passing on of President Magufuli, I have lost a friend, a colleague, and a visionary ally, whom I worked closely, particularly on our commitment to forge lasting bonds between Kenya and Tanzania. In honor of the life of His Excellency the late John Pombe Magufuli, and in recognition of his strong legacy, and in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the United Republic of Tanzania, the wider East African community, and the whole of Africa, who are in deep mourning following the loss of an outstanding son of Africa. Therefore, I, Uhuru Kenyatta, under the authority vested in me as the President of the Republic of Kenya, do hereby order and direct that in testimony to the high esteem in which the people of Kenya hold President John Pombe Magufuli, the Republic of Kenya will observe a 7-day period of national mourning, and also that as a symbol of our enduring respect for the fallen president, as well as our solemn solidarity with the people and the nation of the United Republic of Tanzania, the flag of the East African community and the flag of the Republic of Kenya shall be flown at half-mast at all public buildings and public grounds and wherever else throughout the entire territory of the Republic of Kenya, and at all Kenya's diplomatic missions abroad from today, Thursday, the 18th of March, 2021, until sunset on the day of the funeral. May the soul of President John Pombe Magufuli rest in eternal peace.
I'm going to pause this a while just to say that in my opinion, and this is what I believe, until proven otherwise, they have killed this great Pan-African elder. They have assassinated this great Pan-African leader, President John Pombe Magufuli was killed. I do not apologize for saying that. I will not take that back until you can prove to me otherwise. In the meantime, though, as we did after Patrice Lumumba, the struggle continues. A luta continua, a vittoria is certa. Struggle continues, but victory is certain. We're also going to be going live to the U.S., where our brother Kwame Pianke is standing by. We'll also be talking to him about who was John Pombe Magufuli. You might have heard in this space over the last year, and since we returned from Ghana, that one of the things that I've said, and we are planning to do that, is that we're going into Tanzania this time around. We're going into Tanzania this time around. A lot about the President Magufuli that must be known, that should be known. And we're going to be talking about some of that this morning. And why we believe that he was assassinated, he was killed. Now we're saying that without fear or favor. You don't need to call me on it. I've said it because I believe it. Where are the true revolutionaries? I know that a lot of tributes have been going around, and I see some beautiful tributes going around for President Magufuli. So thank you all, for all of you across the world who have been doing that. Some of those tributes have been driven by PLO Lumumba. PLO Lumumba was a good friend of President Magufuli, and he has spoken about him in this space. On one of the interviews we did a while back when he was blocked from Zambia. Remember when PLO Lumumba was blocked from entering Zambia because he was talking about China in Africa, and Zambia didn't necessarily like it. Well, President Magufuli himself has made some serious decisions regarding not just China in Africa, but the Western world in Africa, and specifically in Tanzania. So where are the true revolutionaries? So in a little while, we'll be focusing on President Magufuli and his successor. They've already sworn in our sister Samia. We're watching to see what happens there. They have been trying to undermine Tanzania, especially in the last election. Remember that. They tried to do that. We talked about that a little. I said in this space that I didn't think that President Magufuli should have risen to the bait in the last election. He did to some extent, but who can blame him? You know, you've got to be in that position sometimes to understand. You remember a while back when the Twitter hashtag was trending, what would Magufuli do? This is because of who Magufuli is and was. I'm going to be talking about that later on. All right, so also this morning it's World Poetry Day. And we couldn't be here in this space on World Poetry Day and not acknowledge this in some serious way. And so that my sister, Jean Binta Breeze, joins me on the phone lines this morning as we talk about poetry in a pandemic. At the same time, I want to congratulate our sister, Olive Senior, who has been named the Poet Laureate. And this was done just a few days ago, if not 2 days ago, right? All right, no stranger to this space on this World Poetry Day. The event today and this is the annual event for World Poetry Day through the Jamaica National Library Service. That's happening. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. But our sister Jean Binta Breeze, Jamaican dumb poet, Jamaican storyteller, international poet. She's also worked as a theatre director, choreographer, and actor, and a teacher, as you know. She has performed her work around the world, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Africa, and has been called one of the most important, influential performance poets of recent years. That's our sister, Jean Binta Breeze. She joins me this morning on World Poetry Day to talk about poetry in a pandemic, in the time of pandemic. There is an event today that we should pay some attention to. The honouring of the Rastafari warrior queens, Nana Faraika Berhane and Mama Faya. And this morning we're going to be talking about that with Dr. Dina Marie Beresford. Dr. Dina Marie Beresford is a librarian manager in Washington, D.C., and adjunct professor on educational leadership. You'll recall her. She's the author of Garaja, the story of Wallow Princess Yashima Bet Ali Abajafar. She's been in this space many times. Her work within the academy is focused on Ethiopian studies, diversity in public and academic leadership, librarianship, and African-centered children's literature. Her dissertation entitled Post-Secondary Education as a Conduit to Ethiopic Repatriation, an Ideology in the Rastafari Movement, focused on the Rastafari and their desire to live in their holy land of Ethiopia. She has traveled extensively to Africa, South America, Dubai, Europe, and the Caribbean, where she's developed her network base in addition to researching for her publication. And we've got a big reveal this morning, because this is a morning that we're revealing the winners in the Running African Black History Month essay competition. Hey, yes, we know we stepped out for a while. No, we've been right here, but just what's happening behind the scenes. But the big reveal today is that we're revealing the essay winners. And so we're going to be talking to the first place winner, the second place winners, and we're also going to be talking to Yvonne Brown, you recall Yvonne, attorney at law, and iNation, because this essay quiz actually was the brainchild of my sister Yvonne Brown, and it was a really good partnership in terms of how this all lined up with Running African for Black History Month. So Yvonne Brown herself, an attorney at law, and iNation, who you know very well, they were the judges on this essay quiz, and they're going to be talking to me this morning about what that was like. But also we're hearing from the winners this morning, going to be announcing the winners this morning, and to talk to them also about what their own experiences were like, and also to have the first place winner reading her essay this morning. So we'll have that coming up inside of the program this morning. You're inside of the Africa Forum, Running African.
Yasama batachinoi Duau neteretu ur Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tolendo Enzituzo tatan Zambia mpungu tolendo Yenge mwen kembo batatan Zambia ba mpungu tolendo tulenveni Zenina mono inkumbu Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tolendo Zabakulu mwela Kongo Yenge Matondo Dua neter
Where are the true revolutionaries? We're going to come back to that poem on this World Poetry Day. But we're going live now. We're in Kingston and Tanzania at the same time. It's important that we go Kingston and Tanzania at the same time. The background noise is a bit much there, my brothers. Ayakush is on the line from Tanzania, and my brother Nkrumah right here on the ground in Jamaica, who has lived in Tanzania. Nkrumah, my brother, good morning to you. You sent me what I should say. Habari za asubuhi kwa familia yangu ya Kiafrika tuko pamoja.
Yeah, sawa. Yeah, man, I mean, good day, my brothers and sisters in Jamaica, one love,
Right, you say that for us now.
Oh, habari za asubuhi.
Habari za asubuhi. And live from Tanzania is my brother Ayakush. Ayakush, good morning.
It's not morning now in Tanzania, though.
We know it's not morning in Tanzania. Good afternoon in Tanzania.
It's doing me, Charlie.
That you, Ayakush?
No, you're not yet. That's nothing. That's I.
Oh, that's yourself. All right, so we're not hearing our brother Ayakush, but we know he should be on the line. There or not there? Let us know if you're there. All right, not hearing him. But, okay, well, let's go with you, my brother, because you've lived in Tanzania, in Nkrumah. One of the things that our listeners should know is that every Sunday morning when I'm in this space and I keep, churning out Kiswahili, it's really you. You're feeding me those lines. You're feeding me those lines in real time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. All right. So how long did you live in Tanzania?
Well, I'm living in Tanzania in my brain,
Yes.
Because as you know, I should be there, but because of this pandemic, I'm still here in Jamaica.
Yes, I know.
I travel East Africa 3 times already. Mm-hmm. And every time I travel East Africa, I go into Tanzania,
Yes.
I mainly enter into Kenya, and from Kenya into Tanzania,
Yeah. We're really mourning, even while we're celebrating the life of President Magufuli. Here is someone who doesn't just speak, but is who he say he is. Tell us about your own experience of this man, because you've been on the ground and you've been dealing not necessarily directly with him, but because of his policies, you've been dealing with persons close to him in terms of his Pan-Africanism. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, Pombe Magufuli is really a strident Pan-Africanist in this time. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes as Africans, we focus too much on just one side of Africa, and sometimes as Rastas, we focus only on one region of Africa.
Yeah.
And Africa with 55 states, South Sudan being the most recent, I think we should zoom in a lot on the one that no one thought much about. And Tanzania is that place led by the one, Pombe Magufuli. I was in Tanzania.
All right, I'm sorry about that. Are you there, my brother?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. We're actually trying to get to Ayakush. We know he's on the line, and that's why you heard that dial tone. All right, yes, go ahead. Go ahead. You were saying?
Yes. So you get what I said previously, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying, as Africans in this part of the world, we need to zoom in and pay keen attention to Pombe Magufuli. Because while I was in Tanzania, to be more specific, a place called Arusha. I visited Arusha because when Dr. Ben was talking about Africa and Africa beginning and human fossils being found, one of the first fossils was found in a place called Arusha in Tanganyika. Tanzania was poisoned, and it was 1.7 million years young in terms of the age of that fossil. Now, leaving from Arusha, going to a place called Moshi and a little place called La Liga. That's where Bush took me. And I was seeing some construction been going on while I was heading from Arusha to Moshi. And I realized there wasn't anything happening more than there was just big craters in the road. I saw a lot of pipelines and I saw a few tractors. And when I turned to my friend Kush and I said, Kush, what's going on here? He says, Bunny Magufuli stopped the road work because there was only agents that was doing it.
Hold the line for me because I want to pick up there. Let me just try and get Ayakush in. Hold the line for me. All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. And this morning we're talking about John Magufuli, the president of the former president of Tanzania. Interestingly enough, he passed, and already a new president has been sworn in. So obviously you understand that. We'll talk about that in shortly. But let us hope that we have on the line with us now our brother Ayakush. Ayakush, you're there?
Yes. Greetings, beloved. Give thanks for having me again.
Greetings, brother. You're in Tanzania. Tell us where in Tanzania are you?
Presently, I'm at Kilimanjaro region. There's home.
Right. Boy, we're so jealous every time you mention that you're in the Kilimanjaro region.
Lima Kihiro.
We have on the line, of course, with us, as you know, Ayakush, our brother, and Kuma. You're pretty good friends, and he was just telling us, by the way, that just going through. Leaving one era into Arusha, right? That you noticed, and Kuma, you were telling us that the work had stopped, and your brother Ayakush was telling you that there was a reason why the work had stopped. Ayakush is on the phone lines. You told us just now that he said President Magufuli stopped the work because there were too many Asians working on that,
and there was not much of our brothers there working. So the president stopped that and said we have to renegotiate what's going on here. Because we can't allow this colonialism at the same time acting as if they are here to make a difference.
And this is interesting. This is interesting, Ayakush, because President, this is one of the reasons why the West, in particular, really doesn't like President Magufuli. And we noticed that the media, even now in depth, have turned on him in a vicious way. So if you're watching the BBC and CNN and the Western media, you would think that this man was a demagogue. But indeed, President Magufuli was a Pan-African and was anti-colonialism and anti-settler colonialism in particular. Talk to us a little bit, Ayakush, about the man, the Pan-African president who you've been looking at, who you've been seeing his works there in Tanzania. You've been there for a while. Talk to us about this Pan-African.
Give thanks again for having me. Greetings to Jamaica and, my family in Jamaica. Yes, President Magufuli is been loved by the nation. The nation is weeping now through the sad loss of him. And it's Pan-Africanist mindset where Tanzania and Africa and all come first, where any development is concerned. So the fact that he look out for his people and he seek to, give them the best life there is, that in itself, develop the respect for him, and the people, as I said, truly love him. They supported him. They call him the bulldozer because he wants things to go right.
Right.
Not just for now, but for generation to come. So he take the necessary measures that other leaders probably not do in Africa to make sure that strong foundation is set where the people can benefit from their resource and their hard work.
Yes.
So he reads love, and the country in itself, as I said, is going through a sad phases, but the struggle continues.
Yes, we're watching what's happening there, and as you say, a sad phase in Tanzania right now because the entire country is really in deep mourning. This is a president who was very much loved, not just in Tanzania, but in East Africa and the continental Africa on a whole. In a little while, we're going to be playing the message from the Kenya, Kenyatta, who spoke about him in Kenya. But we're seeing all the tributes coming in from the poets and the writers and the politicians and civil society and so on coming out of Tanzania. What is it? What is it like? What's the atmosphere like? Because we saw that motorcade that was led by the now President Samia. Talk to us about what Tanzanians are doing and how they're dealing with the death of their beloved President Magufuli.
It's both ways. They're really mourning for his death, but in the next sense that they having a female president, not just here but in East Africa and all, it's kind of a bit optimistic. You know, people are still kind of happy that a revolution in terms of, you know, the face of politics with by a male. Mm-hmm. They kind of have that, you know, high spirit, seeing the female rise to power. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, Tanzania consists of 60 million people. Mm-hmm. So 40 million out of that 60 million is women. So majority really rule in a woman now taking over power.
Yes.
So they kind of balance. They kind of have a good feeling, and that energy that a female really take over power and is a mother that they truly respected too. Mm-hmm. But in the next hand, Magufuli, who they nicknamed the bulldozer, is not there, which pave a way for them. We said that the bulldozer paved the way so that the lioness can move it forward. So it's still a sad time, but yet there's still an happiness to see the face of politics change in terms of a mother, you know.
All right, we're watching that very closely. We are going to be talking a little bit, not a lot, about our sister Samia Hussein later on. Right, later on, because obviously not much is known about her because she has been in the background and recently was named the running mate to President Magufuli. But it's interesting to see the extent to which she's being embraced by the West, and the reporting coming through the Western media about her as opposed to President Magufuli, I'm finding very interesting. And let me just say that and leave that for the moment. But my brother Nkrumah, you know, you're not there. You were scheduled to go back there. We are contemplating going into Tanzania specifically because of President Magufuli, and so you know, your own thoughts on where do you see Tanzania going from here?
It's kind of difficult now to prejudge that, knowing that it's someone new at the helm, and knowing that for sure we know Pombe Magufuli is a Pan-Africanist and still remains. He's not here with us in the physical, so it's difficult to assess it, you know. And I think Ayako should be the most ideal person to most likely elaborate on it. But I'm just hoping things work right, because I already have my bags and suitcase packed.
and so do I, for that matter. You know, and I know you're talking literally, but there are many of us who are planning to head into Tanzania later on this year in the summer. Many of us who are going in, but Ayakush, I know I hear you walking cautiously because obviously you don't know until you know. But you're saying Tanzanians are welcoming President Samia Hussein for right now.
Yes, you can see it, especially as I said, the woman here in the country, knowing that, as I said, the country really dominated by females. So,
yes.
And that trend, they're really welcoming her. Mm-hmm. But the only way we can really see the fullness of what took place is the manifestation over a period of time.
Yes.
In the country maintain the direction of Magufuli, then, you know, you can see where they align with what he was doing. But anyway, it changes, then we can look at external influence in what happened. Mm-hmm. But with it now, we know that, you know, he passed away according to them, his health condition from then. Mm-hmm. So we still await, but in trying to be positive in terms of, you know, the country and, you know, leaders go and leaders come. Yes. Magufuli was really a force to reckon with where Pan-Africanism is concerned.
And a young leader, he was just 61. Yes, and he was just 61. I mean, I say without apology in this space that he was killed.
Yeah,
and I suppose...
agree with you.
You agree with me and Kumo?
Yes, remember we spoke a few days ago?
Of course.
And that was my first utterance.
Yes.
Because I know the mentality, you know.
Yes.
What should I say is that based on the history of colonialism and, you know, colonial master interfering in African people politics, even the diaspora and community here, they all such, you know, they all such claim that he was murdered because of the history
yes.
that, you know, colonial master always do to Africa.
Yes.
As I said, deep down, I feel that within,
yeah.
but we're still open to see the manifestation over the time according to that story. Right,
and we know that we'll see, just as we saw in the case of Lumumba, and it will be many years after. But for now, I think African people who are deep thinkers, who have gone beyond critical thinking into deep thinking, recognize immediately.
Many things.
Yeah.
Many things are suspicious.
Yes, that this one is definitely an assassination.
Yeah, and it happened at that time. It happened at that time where everyone is kind of, you know, it's like his policy where, you know, Pan-Africanism is concerned. So, you know, we are saying, like, why no?
Why now?
That in itself becomes like a start to be, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because just a crossroad, you know.
Yes, now it's a crossroad.
Yeah, and we're at this crossroad, and we say, let's see who are the true revolutionaries. And,
yes.
and we already see that Bunny Magufuli was based upon his doings, and
yes.
it is clear. And even if you think about it, in this pandemic or this pandemic, where they tried to give us vaccines, you know what he did? He took tests of goats, papa, and I'm not mistaken, probably a chicken. And when you take those tests, you send them back to the lab, and they say they are positive
for COVID.
So
he was the one who sent a sample of the papaya and whatever else to the lab to test for COVID, and the papaya tested positive for COVID.
Everything tested positive.
Everything tested positive for COVID.
The papaya.
Yes, and everything.
This is madness.
Yes, and he's been making a stand against the vaccines, against this idea of locking down the world, particularly against the idea of locking down Africa. And so now they've killed him, and the narrative that they're spewing is that he died from COVID. Well, the official narrative is that he had a heart attack, heart failure.
10 years, yeah, this heart problem.
Right. So
yes.
We'll see.
As I said, the diaspora and community here, knowing the history of colonialism and, you know, and European domination, you know, we confirm in, you know, belief of that nature, but, you know, the media will always, you know, bring up his past.
Well, you know, it is President. It makes it more critical
Evident.
For Pan-African media to be. It makes it more. Thank you so much, my brother. We're looking forward to coming into Tanzania, you know, in the summer. We're still looking forward to doing that. We're watching, though, very, very closely to see how things...
And we want to let the people know that, you know, even though this tragedy has happened and we're still moving forward where African liberation is concerned, we're still on the right of return.
Yes.
The Jamaican consulate, Miss Betty Delphasi Ingleton, who is working hard, and she was supposed to meet Magufuli 2 weeks before all of that happened, where she set the policies already of the right of return. So, but she's working with this new president, Madam Samia Hassan, to still agitate, because it's all about Pan-Africanism, and even though Magufuli is not here, it's still not one individual work, but all of us with Pan-Africanist mindset to continue that journey.
The right of return.
Even if it is an assassination, the West cannot assassinate all of us.
They cannot assassinate an ideology. They cannot kill an ideology. They cannot kill Pan-Africanism. They cannot kill an idea. Yeah. Thank you so much, my brothers. Thank you so much, Asante Sana. We'll see you shortly. Thank you so much.
And Kazi and Jema, meaning have a nice work. I know the program just started, and bless up to Jamaica and my mother and everyone. You know, one love, upendo moja, as we say, a man in our upendo, peace and love.
Give thanks.
Let me leave by saying this, Kabu Markeru and Hayakush. Pigano la endelea, japo ushindi ni hakika. Pigano la endelea, japo ushindi ni hakika. Means the struggles continue, but victory is certain.
All right, you're going to send that to me because I want to be able to say that in case for healing. Yeah, give thanks. Everyone. Yeah, ma'am. Walk out. We know that Tanzania is mourning, but some of us are angry. And so we allow Tanzania to mourn and the people of Tanzania to mourn while we stand in the spaces in which we occupy to say that we know you've killed another great leader from the continent of Africa. We know, as you did with Lumumba, you have done with Magufuli.